we have time for Ros to take over. Thank you.
Thank you. It's so beautiful, those songs and the graphics and everything. I really love the way you put all this together so that when we come together, it feels like you've created a container, a beautiful container. On Wednesday, when Bill rang me to check out what the title was going to be for this talk today, I was sitting out on my deck and I was reading this book, Radical Responsibility. Radical Responsibility. So he said, have you got your talk title? And I closed the book up and I said, yes, Radical Responsibility. I didn't know what I was going to talk about, I must say. How to move beyond blame, fearlessly live your highest purpose, and become an unstoppable force for good. I thought, well, that's all good stuff for us. And then I was going through the book and I thought, actually, this is everything that Unity teaches. There's nothing particularly here that would suggest to me beyond where we already are. I don't know about you, but certainly when I came across Unity teachings, they were radical for me. They were absolutely, it was like, well, the things that I was being asked to do. I've just finished the retreat up on the Gold on Sunshine Coast. We were looking at the 4 spiritual laws of prosperity as taught by Edwin Gaines. So when I first came across those principles, if you like, laws, spiritual practices, they were definitely radical for me. As you give, so you receive. So that was the first one of talking about tithing. That was completely out of my field of knowing at that stage. Getting definite about prosperity, I had tinkered with goal setting, but I didn't really know how significant it was. So again, it was another radical step for me to come to grips with what it means to do effective goal setting. The third one about clearing the way for prosperity. So I kind of view, yes, you need to clear out your closets and all your things. And then the whole forgiveness stuff. I had no idea that forgiveness had anything to do with my being in debt. That was a radical thing for me to learn and to practice. And the fourth one was seek and find divine purpose. At that stage, I was working in the trade union movement, very stressful job. And the idea that there might be something that spoke to my heart or came out of a longing, a wanting, was an incredibly, I would say, radical thing for me to learn. So when I think about, well, here we all are, we've all been working with these principles for the last, goodness knows, some of us for years. What could take us then to another level? What could take us beyond this? One of the things that stuck in my mind from a class that I did years ago actually it was in Melbourne. I had come over for I think it was a loving relationships training. And the only thing I remember from it was this phrase, blame is always off the track. Blame is always off the track. So the blaming of another or blaming of ourselves. And it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because we talk about our thoughts are creative. We know this is that's our third unity principle. Everybody is divine, right? There's only one power, one presence. Everybody is divine. The third principle is that our thoughts are creative. And we know that it's not just our conscious thoughts, but our unconscious thoughts, which are creative. So then the proposition is for this is, if our thoughts are creative and if we take a 100% responsibility for everything that shows up in our lives, everything. And part of us, I don't know about you, but part of me goes, well, maybe not everything. You know what? Don't other people have their responsibility? Haven't they played a part in what's going on? When we were doing the meditation retreat last year, the third focus phrase that we had in the meditation was, I accept the world just as it is. Now sit with that for just a moment. I accept the world just as it is. And then think, wow, do I though then start to go, yeah, but look what's happening over there. I don't like it. Look what's happening over there. I mean, goodness, can any of us feel good about what's going on in Kuwait at the moment or the Middle East? Probably not. But what if we took that notion of 100% responsibility for what's going on? Not from a point of view of blame, because blame is off the track, but just from a radical point of view. What if the thoughts that we hold, the ideas that we have, the emotions that we have are 100% responsible for what's going on? It reminds me of the work that, and I'm not sure that I will say his name correctly, but the man who used the Ho'oponopono work on a hospital in Hawaii, a mental hospital. And he was a psychiatrist, but he did not meet with the patients. Do you know this story? You may have heard it told before. What he did was that he got the file, and these were criminally insane people, so they had done horrendous things. He got the file for each of these people, and he sat with the file, and his approach was he would go, I'm sorry for any part that I have played in the fact that you have done these dreadful things. Please forgive me. I love you and thank you. He worked with these ideas in the quiet of his office with these files, and over a period of time, and I'm not sure I've got the time accurate now, but I believe it was over a period of 1 or 2 years, that whole hospital was able to be vacated because everybody became well. Now, doesn't that blow your mind? It blows mine. What if we are what if we take that approach of being radically responsible for what's going on in the world? And that we practice then that process of Ho'oponopono, those 4 phrases, I'm sorry, acknowledging that somehow, in some way, we are part of what's going on. Some way we have affected what's going on in the world. Please forgive me. I've done these things unconsciously, obviously. I wasn't aware. I was doing a session yesterday morning, and we were invited to share a story about a time when I should have done something, you know, the good old should, the time I should have done something about money and didn't. And I was aware. I first of all said, I don't think I've got anything to share. And then I remembered a time when I had been completely unconscious that my partner was paying for the whole of our mortgage. Completely unconscious. And it was like, oh, there I was, just gaily going on, unaware on some level that I was doing what I was doing, and couldn't really understand why he was so angry most of the time. But it could have been, it was the first time I saw that maybe my actions, my unconscious actions, my unconsciousness had played a part in what was going on. So when I'm thinking about these 4 spiritual laws that we looked at, as you give, so you receive. So one of the teachings that we use in Unity is about tithing, right? Charles Fillmore talks in his book, Prosperity, that tithing is the road to prosperity. So as I said before, that for me was a radical idea. And as I started to do it, now I'm thinking, so what's beyond that? And when I was working with Edwin Gaines' material, she actually related how at one point when she owed a lot of money and she was praying about, well, how do I deal with this? You know, the amount that's coming in at the moment is not going to meet this huge demand that I had. And she asked for a sign. I love that. Edwin often asks for signs of things. She asked for a sign, something that I would know absolutely clearly that this was a sign for me, she said. And she came out of her prayer meditation time, looked out the window. She'd been staying in a motel or a hotel. And there was this big neon sign that said, up your level of giving, up your level of giving. And she took that as it was actually a sign for diamond rings, I think, up the level of your giving. But she took that as a sign that she needed to not just give 10%, but add to it. So she added 25% on the 10%. So if she was giving 100, she would then give 125. So that was my next up leveling of doing that. When I was putting material together for our retreat using Edwin's material, I came across the phrase from Emerson where he says, you cannot outgive God. You cannot outgive God. Isn't that awesome? Think about it. You can actually keep giving. Eric Butterworth talks about tithing as being like our training wheels. So he was very much about, don't become rigid about the 10%. Use them as your training wheels to get going and then start to open up. So maybe the radical responsibility about giving is that we become generous givers. I was very taken aback in one of the prosperity classes where they asked, are you a giver or a taker? And at that stage, early on, when I was only starting to learn these things, it was like, oh, I think I'm a taker. So a radical thing for me then was to learn to become a giver. The second spiritual law was about getting definite about prosperity, goal setting. And this is an area that I have not enjoyed in this prosperity journey because I felt like what Edwin had put forward was that you need to write down what you want. I was very good at saying what I didn't want, but write down what you want and then put a date by it. Well, for me, that felt like another chance when I could beat myself over the neck or the head, because I was bound not to be able to achieve those things that I was writing down. So I had to come back to blame is always off the track. do it anyway. And so what if you have to scribble out that date and put another date? But do it anyway. And then I came across, so that was a radical step for me to actually write some things down and start moving forward in those areas. And I must say, it's been encouraging to go back over some of those lists and see, oh, actually, I did achieve them. They did happen. One of them was that I'd wrote down that I wanted to become a licensed Unity teacher. Well, I'm a licensed Unity teacher, now a licensed minister as well. I didn't have that one written down. I wasn't expecting that one. I wanted to go to Edwine's place and do the Master Prosperity Teacher training with her. Well, eventually I did that. Some of these goals took 20 years to come to fruition. 20 years. And I think I kept going because Charles Fillmore said, never give up. Persistence, you have to be persistent. The next level of goal setting came to me with the idea that you go for something that's much bigger than you are. And I think I've talked to you about this impossible dream. You go for something that scares you. You can't see a way that you could ever achieve it. That's the goal that pulls on resources that you didn't even know you had, that you grow into being able to do that. And so that's the case now where I live, where we live in this village. That was a dream, an impossible dream, but is now part of our reality. The third one is the clearing the way for prosperity, clearing away physical stuff, but then doing the forgiveness. And for me, the forgiveness was definitely a radical step. How does that have anything to do with my indebtedness? But as I've practiced it, indeed, my indebtedness cleared up. And there were lots of other wonderful benefits from doing that forgiveness work. So if we were to take that beyond, what would be a radical responsibility around forgiveness? I was working with some material, again, in the prosperity area, and the facilitator said, I practice pre-forgiveness. Before I even get out of bed, I practice and forgive people their 20 transgressions that are likely to face me. It's like, okay, how's that for a radical thought? Pre-forgiveness, even before you get out of bed, forgiven those things that are happening, might happen. And then seek and find your divine purpose. Seek and find. Are you living your divine purpose? For me, that was such a radical thought. How could I ever live doing what I really wanted to do? How could that be possible? And yet here I am. I am living. I am doing what I love to do. It's so strange, isn't it? And it's what I got from Edwine was making that 100% commitment. She made the commitment, 100% commitment, to be responsible for the abundance, for raising the abundance consciousness of the world. Don't you love that? 100% responsible for raising the abundance consciousness of the world. So that's challenges me to go, am I really doing it 100? Have I made 100% commitment? Or am I tinkering around the edges? to live that life, as this guy Fleet Mall says, how to move beyond blame, to live fearlessly your highest purpose and become an unstoppable force for good. It's a fascinating story. This man who's written this book was sentenced to 30 years in prison for drug trafficking. He served 14 years. But during that time in prison, he started to develop these ideas. Basically, he gave himself a whole teaching around it, the unity principles, and practiced meditation. And now, since he has been out of prison, and even while he was in prison, he got to a point where he was able to run classes and help other people to overcome their feelings of shame and guilt and all those things that go with being handed those kind of incredible sentences and knowing that he was fully guilty. It was not like he was imprisoned by mistake. He was there because he had done these horrendous things in terms of working with drugs and drug cartels. So radical responsibility, taking it beyond what we've been learning, what we know now. Can we take it to that next level? When you think about, have you been coasting along? Maybe it's time to take that next step, that radical step, which affects the fundamental nature of something. And maybe there's something in those 4 areas that we've looked at. As you give, so you receive, in the area of giving, of tithing. Maybe there's something about getting definite about prosperity, about that goal setting. Maybe it's something in the forgiveness area and seeking and finding your divine and living your divine purpose. So let's take this into a time of meditation. I invite you just to make yourself comfortable. Take a deep breath. And just let your mind settle as your body, just feel it supported wherever you are in the chair. And know that you are completely taken care of, as we learned in today's daily word, in the comfort. All our needs are already met. We are promised our daily bread. The sustenance of life supports us completely. And it's from that place that we can launch. We can become radically responsible. We can do more than we thought possible. We can live the impossible dream. We can give as we've never given before. We can forgive. We can forgive on a global scale. Never doubt Margaret Wheatley said that one person can change the world, for that is all that's ever happened. One person. And you are that person. Take another deep breath. And know, as one of your truth states, that you are here for a holy purpose, a right time and the right place. And so it is. Amen.